Of all the creatures Mother Nature has seen fit to place upon this earth, probably none has inspired quite the same kind of fear and fascination as the shark. Sharks seem to tap some hidden root in the human psyche, some dark corner where the nightmares hide. Surprisingly little is known about sharks, but today a handful of scientists around the world are making the first serious attempts to understand their behavior. In the next hour, we'll try to cut away some of the myths about sharks and get at the far more fascinating truth. And while you may not come to love sharks, I hope you'll come to understand and admire these magnificent creatures for what they are. This is Peter Benchley. Join us as we range across the world in search of the most awesome predators on Earth, sharks. When I was a child on Nantucket, my father used to take me out fishing in the Atlantic. That's when I saw my first sharks. I've been fascinated with them ever since. I used to think my interest in sharks was something special. But when I wrote Jaws, I learned I was not alone. Millions of people have come to share my fascination with these beautiful, primitive predators. There are lots of different kinds of shark, but any listing must start with the great white shark, sometimes known as the White Death. The great white is the world's largest predatory fish. It can reach 21 feet in length and weigh up to 3 tons. It's impossible to pretend that the great white is anything but what it is, a huge, brutal, primordial eating machine. It is a voracious man-eater, although it normally sticks to fish, turtles, and sea lions. It even attacks boats. No one takes chances with the great white. Even the protection of a steel shark cage seems flimsy when one of these monsters is cruising the neighborhood. It is the ultimate predator, and here's the extensible jaw that does the dirty work. Sharks come in all sizes. The smallest is only 6 inches long. This is the largest. It's the relatively gentle whale shark, which grows to 60 feet and weighs up to 90,000 pounds. It has 3,000 teeth and doesn't use any of them because it's largely a plankton feeder. While it seems docile, be warned, a pair of boots was found in the stomach of one specimen. The bizarre-looking hammerhead shark is definitely unfriendly. It is known to attack man, and divers treat it with great respect. Sharks have been around since long before the dinosaurs and have evolved some strange forms. This is one of the strangest of the more than 300 shark species. It's a Pacific angel shark. Like many of the bottom-living sharks, it's quite harmless and outwardly at least more closely resembles its cousins, the skates and rays. The horn shark, too, is completely harmless to man except when it destroys his shellfish beds. It feeds largely on mollusks and crustaceans. There are the specialized crushing teeth with which it does the job. Another weird-looking species is the Australian wobbegong, a carpet shark that lives on the ocean floor. It's beautifully camouflaged, even down to the algae-like growths around its mouth. Like the great majority of shark species, the wobbegong is too small and timid to be considered even remotely dangerous to man. And finally, one last species you don't have to worry about. The most impressive thing about it is its name, Heterodontus portus jacksoni. It's the Port Jackson shark of Australia, another harmless, shallow water fish. And so we come to the shark-shaped sharks, the ones that understandably inspire terror. Other animals may be equally dangerous, but what else looks so menacing? The torpedo shape, the classic undershot jaw, the ominous dorsal fin knifing through the surface. Combined, these features seem to embody the very essence of potential violence. It is these sharks we will be studying at close, sometimes very close, quarters. An important center of shark study is Rangiroa Atoll in the Pacific. But years before the scientists got here, Rangiroa was known as a place where man and shark had learned to live in peaceful, if uneasy, coexistence. 6 years ago, a shark almost completely tore the calf muscle from the right leg of this Polynesian spear fisherman. Yet he continues to fish for his living because men and sharks have been fishing these same reefs together for years. And the men regard a shark attack as nothing more than an unlucky accident. They believe the chances of it happening again are very slight. A lifetime of close contact with sharks has convinced these fishermen that, contrary to common belief, shark behavior is predictable, and you can avoid attack if you obey the rules. One of the most important rules that has to be obeyed concerns the handling of speared fish whenever sharks are around. The struggles of even a small fish can attract a shark, so get the catch to the surface quickly. Get under cover of the boat as soon as possible. These are elementary and obvious precautions. More important is the fact that the fishermen have come to recognize, through years of experience, when a shark means trouble. They can tell by its body posture and the way it moves in the water. Those are remoras, shark suckers, hitching a ride behind the dorsal fin. Of course, an occasional fish has to be sacrificed to the rival fisherman. Man and shark may be equals, but the shark is clearly a little more equal than the man. Well, it's a small price to pay for coexistence. Over the past several years, scientists Don Nelson and Richard Johnson have been testing scientifically the same theories of shark behavior that the Rangiroa fishermen discovered by instinct. The The first species the team encountered is extremely active at night, an eerie time to go looking for a shark that averages 8 feet in length. The reef white-tip shark is extremely well equipped with strong cutting and sawing teeth. It also has an inquisitive and persistent nature. It must therefore be treated with respect, though there are few records of the white-tip attacking man. It tends to hunt the bottom layers for small fish and octopus. On the reefs off Rangiroa, it is partial to coral caves. As we'll soon see, a shark that means to be aggressive usually gives quite definite signs. But these white tips are swimming in a completely normal and relaxed fashion. So, lesson number 1 is that by no means all of the deadly-looking sharks are really as dangerous as they look. Of course, it has to be admitted, though, that the sharks in this night dive weren't exposed to any feeding stimuli, which might well have affected their attitude and made them far less placid. Even now, the scientists are planning an experiment that does include feeding stimuli and involves a far more dangerous collection of sharks. Sharks do not seem to be territorial or to defend a given part of a reef. However, the scientific team discovered through telemetry that they're much more regular in their habits than previously suspected. Telemetry means attaching small ultrasonic transmitters to the subjects of the experiment. With a shark, there's only one way to do this: persuade the fish to swallow it. Don Nelson inserts the transmitter inside a dead bait fish. The mouth of the fish is sewn up, and soon, with luck, the shark will be sending out underwater signals. The rest of the equipment consists of a receiver and an underwater directional hydrophone. The signals transmitted by the shark can be picked up through a mile or more of water. And here's the intended mobile underwater broadcasting station, a gray reef shark. Out in the channel between the islands frequented by grays, the transmitter-equipped fish is attached to a float and lowered over the side. One of the diving team goes down to supervise the pickup. The receiver is switched on. And a gray reef shark moves in. Though sharks tear at large prey, they swallow small fish whole. Small transmitters, too, with any luck. The bait is seized. The first shark just takes the tail. Now stimulated by the feeding activity, the other grays move in. This, too, is a moment the divers have learned to watch. At Rangiroa, grays have attacked more fishermen than any other species. But this time they display none of the body attitudes that warn of an impending attack. At last, a gray swallows the head of the bait containing the transmitter and makes off with it. Telemetry of this and other gray reef sharks in the channel at Rangiroa has revealed some astonishing things about the regularity of their habits. Grays, which often hunt in packs, seem to lead a solitary life on occasions. One individual spent each part of his day in a different location, moving regularly and on time to his next point of call. In the case of the transmitter we've just watched being swallowed, Don Nelson was able to get a fix on the shark and follow it for some distance.
Let's circle around.
When the signals finally indicated that the researchers had caught up with the transmitting shark, the team found the fish had led them to an entire squadron of grays at a location they'd never suspected to be occupied. The shark's sensory organs are what makes them such efficient killers, so it's vital to understand how they work and what they respond to. One of the major stimuli that leads sharks to their prey is sound, the sort of low-frequency noises made by a struggling or wounded fish. Here, the team prepares to create such sounds electronically and within range of a gathering of sharks. Sharks have a built-in seek and destroy weapons system. They come with incredibly efficient prey detection devices. By means of a complex system of hearing organs in the head and sensitive nerve endings along the center of their flanks, sharks can detect both long and short-range sounds up to a distance of several hundred yards. Because of the artificially created sounds, this is potentially a very dangerous situation. The men are deliberately trying to stimulate the sharks, with totally unpredictable results. The grays gradually move in and become more curious and excited. Then comes the moment for which the divers must watch, the aggressive display which often precedes an attack. It is betrayed by a series of exaggerated swimming movements. Watch that gray in the background. The swimming action doesn't look very significant until you break it down and analyze it. Note that lift of the snout and the arching of the back. See the way the pectoral fins point stiffly downward. Johnson and Nelson call this an agonistic display. Of course, the aggression may be directed at another shark, but it's a warning to the diver, either to stay still or to back away slowly. Hurried flight is likely to trigger an attack. Sharks have extremely well-developed senses of taste and smell. When a bundle of dead fish is fixed to the seabed, they can detect the smell from a great distance and soon home in on the target. With sharks excited by both sound and smell, it was time for the diving team to move on to a safe distance. A feeding frenzy can develop in a very short time with reef whitetips, blacktip reef sharks, and grays all joining in. In this situation, even comparatively harmless species can lash out in competition with each other or at any diver that gets in the way. At times like this, there's probably no such thing as a harmless shark. Sharks look like airplanes, World War II fighter planes to be exact. There's a good reason for this, because a shark must perform almost precisely like a fighter. The upturned snout, the wing-like pectoral fins and raised tail provide lift, and the streamlined shape is designed for speed. They're the fastest of all fish. Blues like this have been clocked at an astounding 43 miles per hour. As a predator, the blue is equipped with all the wonderful hunting devices that sharks have evolved over 350 million years. That large, malevolent eye gives fair sight, especially in dim light. Nasal pits detect smells more dilute than 1 part per million. Along the flank, this is a mako, there's a row of nerve endings and sensitive pits called the lateral line. These can detect movement of prey at close ranges. Motive power comes mainly from a tail whose upper lobe is usually far larger than the lower one. The downward drive of this causes the shark to plane forward on its flattened undersurface and wing-like pectoral fins. To document the shark's amazingly precise sensory equipment, our camera team moved east to the Channel Islands off the California coast. Here, in the waters off San Diego, the sea is warm enough to suit several species of sharks. And the waters are rich in underwater vegetation and in the fish life which provides the basic food for the sharks. California's sea lions hunt in the giant kelp beds. Sea lion mothers are no lovers of sharks. There is at least one species here, the mako, that eats their pups. Fear of sharks is a possible reason for this sea lion cow's aggressiveness to the camera. So these were the waters in which the team was going to work. The shark cage was necessary because you can never quite be sure, 60 miles off San Diego, what's going to turn up. In charge of photography was Stan Waterman, and behind him Chuck Nicklin and Howard Hall, all extremely experienced in working with sharks.
I knew he was making up. Oh, damn it, I'm sorry.
Clarice Prang, a young scientist studying locomotion and the bite power of sharks, joined the team.
I knew he was making up.
The safety cage was able to ascend and descend like an elevator by means of compressed air. Attracted by baiting with oily dead fish, a very large blue shark was early on the scene. It's always a gamble whether sharks are going to turn up when you want them. Once one fish comes to the bait, or chum, others are likely to follow. So the whole photographic team goes over the side to meet their guests. This is dangerous work, and everybody knows it. So, along with the camera team and scientists, the group includes safety men whose sole job is to watch out for an unexpected attack. They are armed with explosive powerheads called bang sticks, capable of killing a shark on contact. These transparent Chinese lanterns are primitive organisms called colonial salps. Some authorities believe that salps were one of the first creatures to have a primitive backbone, which would make them ancestors of all vertebrates, sharks and man alike. On the very first dive, the team struck it lucky. Big blues, detecting the smell of the chum, began to show up in considerable numbers. The blues are in an eating mood, and that can mean danger. When excited in a feeding frenzy, they are likely to lash out. People once thought a shark had to roll over before it could bite because of its undershot jaw. Not true. Its movable jaw makes the shark a highly efficient biter. When a school of food fish appears, the guards keep an extra sharp lookout. The attitude of the apparently docile blues could change. Even so, the cage is basically not to escape from them, but this is something different, a potentially lethal hammerhead. The shark that wears its eyes on stalks has a bad reputation for attacking man. This hammerhead is about 10 feet long. The horizontal plane on which the eyes are mounted doesn't hinder the hammerhead when it comes to biting. The hammerhead soon fades away, but the unpleasant character who follows it has come to stay, a big mako. This is what the team had been hoping to film and the reason they had brought the safety cage. A wise precaution when you look at those teeth. As soon as the mako arrived on the scene, several sea lion cows appeared, as if to keep their eye on the big killer who sometimes snatches their pups from around the nearby islands. For a diver, a shark feeding frenzy is a thing to stay well clear of. The excited feeding activity that follows was created by heavy baiting with dead fish so that it could be mainly filmed in safety from the surface. It illustrates a number of fascinating things about shark behavior. That's a blue attacking the basket containing the chum. Watch the swimming action, the large upper lobe of the tail driving the shark on those wing-like pectoral fins. Note the typical seizing, shaking, and sawing action of the bite. Keeping close to the cage, the team filmed some of the action with the blue sharks from underwater. Look at this. A frenzied blue actually takes a bite out of another blue. This shark wasn't going to let go at any price, even risking being hauled out of the water. Watch the jaw open to snatch that fish head. It's when the water becomes clouded with fragments of tissue and blood that sharks appear like vultures on a kill. Blues so far, but suddenly there's a stranger in their midst, a mako. Note the more evenly sized upper and lower lobes of the tail, the shorter jaws armed with some particularly ferocious teeth. And here in a small mako are those teeth. Shark teeth are only loosely attached and must be replaced constantly. Many sharks will go through at least 1,000 teeth in a lifetime. Diver Steve Early got raked across the head by a shark during this filming sequence. Luckily, only his wetsuit hood was damaged. To kill a shark was the last thing the team wanted, but they had to recognize that the safety of the men was paramount. Maintaining security was becoming more and more difficult. This was one case when a mako came too close for comfort. And the bang stick seals its fate. The safety man had to make an instant decision to fire his power head. There's no bullet in it, simply a large powder charge. A number of the sharks bore large wounds which were almost certainly the result of attacks by their own kind during feeding frenzies. That's an unusual species of remora, or shark sucker, attached to this badly scarred blue. And here was one of the most amazing aspects of the California study, actually hand feeding an open sea wild shark. Please don't ever try this yourself. This job is strictly for the pros. Anyone who wishes to discourage unwelcome attention from a shark is advised not to grab it by the fins. Even a small fish is too strong to hold, and it's apt to get angry. A safer way to deal with a boisterous shark is to seize it by the nose. This one temporarily went limp. Richard Johnson, one of the team's advisors, advocates banging an attacking shark on the nose as a last resort. The nose is where many of its sensory systems are concentrated. But, as will soon become abundantly clear, the best way to deal with a shark is to keep as far away from them as possible. A lot remains to be learned about how and why sharks attack. Such information could someday help the survivors of shipwrecks and air disasters. The time had come to begin a series of experiments which were the true purpose of the expedition. The first experiment concerned the means by which sharks hunt down their prey, human or otherwise. The object of the experiment was to test the relative strengths of the three main feeding stimuli: smell, sound, and sight. First, for smell. This container was packed with oily fish bits, whose effect on sharks has already been seen. Big makos were soon on the spot. So were the big blues. Beyond the fish bits is a container holding a transmitter of low-frequency sounds that will resemble the vibrations made by a struggling or wounded fish when it's turned on. The waving white object is a visual attractor, a dummy squid. Squid are a particular shark delicacy. Which of the three known shark attractors would achieve the most response? The electronic fish begins its simulated sounds. At the first attempt, a number of sharks arrived and milled around indiscriminately. This was thought to be because too much fish oil had accidentally been released. The next day, the experiment was tried when there were known to be no sharks in the immediate area. The result, though far from conclusive, was more interesting. A single blue arrived. It approached the sonar device. Then it headed for the fish-baited lure, attracted by the oily smell. It nosed this for some time. Then it made off as if to inspect the other baits. Having circled the visual signal, and apparently dismissed it, it becomes strongly attached to the audio imitation of a struggling fish and actually mouthed the transmitter. Of course, such tests have to be carried out at length and with many different species, but this blue shark does seem to suggest that it finds the sound of a wounded fish irresistible. It doesn't care for the visual enticement of the beckoning squid. This backs up the belief that sharks' eyesight is used mainly in the initial approach. Unless it then finds attractive sounds or smells, it probably doesn't stay around long. Scientist Clarice Prang's study concerns shark locomotion, the precise manner in which they swim, as well as the bite power of their jaws. She worked mainly from inside the cage. She takes her bulky, slow-motion camera from a teammate. To give her the close-up she needed, the baits were attached directly to the outside of the cage, one of them containing a bite gauge. Right away, Clarice began to wonder who was watching whom. Chuck Nicklin adjusts the fish inside which a bite measurer has been planted. The device consists of a metal rod surrounded by ball bearings. The amount by which the rod is dented by the ball bearings gives a reading in pounds per square inch of force exerted. Soon the area is thick with sharks. It's typical of sharks that they circle the prey, getting closer and closer as their confidence builds. Another piece of behavior that divers would do well to remember. Eventually, when the circle gets small enough, they'll move in for the kill. In this case, it's the closeness of the bait to the cage that is upsetting them. But as will be seen, they eventually overcome their apprehension. Here comes the first attack on the bite gauge. Watch how the membrane closes over the shark's eye, presumably to protect it from debris in the water. This big blue has taken an ordinary fish bait, but the nearer one has got a second bite gauge. The tube can be seen nearly out of the fish as the shark shakes the bait. In fact, this small blue was more intent on shaking than biting, and eventually shook the gauge right out of the fish. Chuck Nicklin was able to retrieve the gauge in order to load it inside another bait. While he did so, he was besieged by sharks practically storming the cage to get at the baits. This blue has the tail end of one of the fish it has just swallowed sticking out of a gill slit. On the last day of filming off San Diego, the big makos grew bold enough to turn up in force around the cage. The bite gauge was waiting for them, and it wasn't long before they joined in the attack. Look at the trailing edge of this mako's dorsal and pectoral fins. The streamer-like parasites attached to them are copepods. A little discouragement until both cameras are ready. Those are parasites behind the lower fin, too. At last, both cameramen are ready to film, but now the Mako is reluctant. At the first attempt, the shark simply cuts the rope. Finally, a perfect grab. These Mako bites were later analyzed. The tips of the shark's teeth were found to have exerted an incredible pressure of 8,000 pounds per square inch. To me, there's something elemental and profound about the shark. That it could have survived over so many millions of years with so little change from its original form suggests that it is one of nature's most perfect designs. Now, at long last, the scientists are taking a closer look at this wonderful animal, which is all to the good. Because the more we know about these and any other creatures, about their place in nature and their relationship to man and other animals, the less we need fear them. And the less we need fear them, the less we will be compelled to destroy them.
Kodak Video Programs has several other exciting offerings for you. Here is just a sampling of some of them.
Once you step on that basketball court, there shouldn't be nothing going through your mind, or you shouldn't be trying to think about anything other than play your best, give 100%. But in my situation, it's my life. I got to win.
Mastering the game of basketball takes dedication, concentration, guidance, and practice. Come with us as we present one of today's superstars of the game, Larry Bird, along with one of the all-time great coaches, Red Auerbach. They will give you some special insights into the game and show you how you can make the most of your own skills and talents.
When I was young, I ate 2 steaks, football, training table, 2 steaks, didn't chew them, just ate them. Just give me them, wow, hard. People say, whoa, look at that boy eat. Hard, hard.
The laughter never ends when Bill Cosby shares his views on reaching age 49. His hilarious way of making the ordinary laughable will be an evening of fun for all ages. No one tells it quite like Cosby.
America is the light in the harbor, that immigrants see, that tells them they've reached.
The splendor and the majesty of the United States is the subject of this